obtained his master's in University of Oulu, Finland, and the doctorate from University of Turku from Finland as well. So his research focuses on global virtual software teams, IT outsourcing. And this one I'm kind of puzzled, the emotional intelligence of IT leaders. What does that mean?
I can talk about that too.
Okay, sounds good. I'm really interested in that one.
Yeah.
So he's the executive director of ID Lab. You know, ID Lab does great work and gives you an opportunity to work with, like in collaboration with software companies and get a taste of how the real world software engineering works. So he does an excellent job in there, and he's actually the founder of the DePaul Study Abroad program and has been the chair of that committee for over a decade. So he's published over hundreds of scholarly articles, and he's one of the co-chair of the Chicago chapter of International Association for Professionalism. So without further ado, invite Professor Yele to talk about the tactical approach to global virtual software teams challenges.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, I know some of you have some familiar faces here, so I feel honored that you guys actually decided to show up to come listen to me. Thank you for coming. Wow, Isuru, thank you for such a great introduction. I feel special now.
You are special.
When Isuru asked me last week or so that can I give a talk, I actually wanted to say no. Well, he's such a great guy, I can't say no to him, so I said yes. Okay, so today I'm going to focus on one of my research areas that I think I have not done enough compared to other areas, which focuses on global software teams. I actually designed and redesigned the global IT course we teach in our program. I've not taught it for a very long time. Another professor is teaching it, but I redesigned it. So part of this is a continuation of that research. But the focus of today's is about virtual teams, global virtual teams, and I want to focus on some of the tactical solutions, what you can do beyond collaborative tools. So when you talk about global teams, right, how can you have a global team without technology, right, without communication tools, things like Zoom, Slack, and all those sort of tools we use to collaborate among global teams. That's not the focus of this talk. That is almost obvious, and there's been a lot of research on how to use things like Slack, things like Zoom, why email is not an appropriate tool for global project because of too many emails. So that's not going to be the focus of this talk. What I'm going to focus on today is kind of do a little dive into teams, different type of teams, quick definition of globalization as I like to say it. Then we're going to get into why global software teams, why are companies globalizing their operations, and what are some of the forces driving global teams, and then I'm gonna go into two types of global teams: global centers and virtual teams. They are two separate things. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that, and then that will lead us to talk about what are some of the challenges among global teams in general, and what makes virtual teams even more challenging. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I will talk about the research that I did in DePaul from 2011 to 2018. And I think this is why I think most people are here. They want to know about some of the lessons learned. Obviously, I want to talk about development approach, question around waterfall versus Agile Scrum, and then some of the solutions from these research findings. Okay, so let's get started. Teams, different type of teams. Some of you are familiar with these teams, right? Temporary teams, like you have in your class. You're doing a class project. You put a team together for 10 weeks, and after that, you disperse. Permanent teams, if you are a doctor or a specialist, you might have your own teams. They are staying with you for a very long time. It's not temporal. It's a long. So if you're a professional, if you're a lawyer, an accountant, you have a global permanent team in your office. Self-managed teams, single discipline teams, multidiscipline teams, so all kinds of teams. I just want to give you an insight into various types of teams here. What we are really interested in is global teams. So let's start by defining globalization. So the important thing here is when we talk about global, we're talking about bigger space, right? We're talking about boundaries across different countries, different locations. It can also be time zone differences, space, all kind of, those goes into the definition I like to use for globalization. Distance from cultures, time zones, all those goes into what we are looking at here from globalization standpoint. Now the pressure is even higher. We have the Associate Provost for Global Initiatives here. My job might depend on this. Well, it's a honor to have you here, John Mario. Okay, so really quick, I talked about teams, different type of teams. Then we talked about, I want to focus on global teams. So I just did the definition of globalization, global teams, pretty much distance, time, kind of catching you up to that. And what we really want to talk about today is the global teams. So I'm going to start by what are some of the forces driving global teams? Why are companies globalizing, if you want to put it that way? Well, there is demand for global customers, right? So if you're selling a product, if you launch an app, a product in Chicago, you really want that product to be available on a global scale. Location is not relevant. People use Facebook all over the world. People are using Uber all over the world. So you got global customers. You also have global products. Product that is designed to be global by nature. For a very long time, and I sort of was talking about this, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Chicago IAOP, which stands for International Association of Outsourcing Professionals. This is one of the bigger drivers of globalization in the corporate world, that companies want to take advantage of low cost in different parts of the world. So there's a lot of talent in places like India and very good software engineers. So if you're a company in Chicago and you're doing software development in Chicago, why do you want to pay high-end costs when you could take advantage of talent in places like India, China, Brazil? So there's a lot of what is called offshore outsourcing. Okay, I teach a class on outsourcing, so this is now a topic we can dive into in 1 hour. You can't outsource everything. There are things that qualify for outsourcing. There are things that do not qualify for offshore outsourcing in this case. In fact, there are things you shouldn't even outsource at all. But this is one of the big drivers of globalization. And then you have global R&D. What does that mean? Among global products, they don't actually work exactly the same way across the world. Let me give you an example. If you think about Uber, right, as a product, the way we use Uber in Chicago or in the US is not the way Uber works all over the world. So I was in Chile a few years back, and I was staying late in a friend's place, and I said I need to get back to my hotel. He said, okay, I'll call Uber for you. I'm like, my Uber app is not working. He's like, don't worry, I'll call Uber for you and you pay cash. I'm like, can I do that? He's like, yeah. You pay cash to the driver, he drop you off and you pay cash. I'm like, I don't know if we can do that. So that is global R&D. The way things works in your location doesn't work like that. It's the same thing if you go to McDonald's in South Africa. They have location-specific products that you can buy here. You could buy different McDonald's products in China, in South Africa that doesn't exist here. So we talked about global products, and it's based on global R&D. Okay, really quick point here before I move on, and I don't want to get into theory. This is me teaching now. When you talk about globalization, it's actually localization. The reason companies globalize is because of the resources in that location. There will be no offshore outsourcing to India if there is no resources in India. Natural resources is a special case. People are buying coffee from some global locations, and you see companies like Starbucks saying we are a global company. They go to those locations because of the localization there. So if you really want to globalize, if you are thinking about globalizing your resources, build a strong local talent, knowledge, presence. So if DePaul want to be a global company, let's build strong education here in DePaul, and you have people all over the world coming or actually asking us to go out. So localization is really the new globalization. That is just the idea over there. Okay, let's move on. This is not supposed to be a lecture. This is supposed to be a research talk. The focus of this research is global virtual software team. And I want to kind of differentiate between two teams here, global centers and virtual software teams. So if you think about global centers, look at these red dots. You could think about them as global centers. So this would be a team of software developers in that location. And then you have another team in another location. So you might have a team here in, say, Chicago, another team in Brazil, another team in China. And those will be global centers. They may or may not collaborate, but let's assume they do collaborate, but you have a group of people in that location. That's not the focus of this research. This research focuses primarily on virtual teams. So what separates virtual teams from global teams? Virtual teams are dispersed teams of specialists, individuals, worldwide, separated by distance, and they are put together because of their expertise. So think about these blue dots as individuals, okay? They remain in their locations, again, back to the point. Localization is the new globalization, right? They remain in their locations, but they collaborate electronically. Again, the focus of this talk is not going to be global tools, collaborative tools, because that is obvious. We can't have distance education without things like D2L, Zoom. Those are obvious. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about different tactical solutions here today. So virtual teams, they have ownership of the application. So on this project, the global virtual teams actually own the full life cycle of their product, from development to maintenance to sustainability. Keywords here is that these are dispersed individuals. They remain in their respective locations. They collaborate using collaborative tools, and they get a job done. They're different from global centers. Global centers kind of work like co-located teams. Everyone is in the same space. We all work together. And when we need to collaborate with our other global teams, we collaborate. But we may not even have to. They also travel from time to time. Virtual teams may not have to travel. So they may or may not travel, virtual teams. So the focus of this research is going to be on virtual teams, and that's what I want you to kind of put in perspective as I go through this. Any questions so far? Okay. If you have questions, ask John Mario. All right, so this is what our virtual global teams looks like. Dispersed individuals separated all over the world, picked because of their talent and resources and ability to contribute to the development project.
Who's the red guy?
The red guy? I think that's me. Because I put the whole team together, so to say. All right, so this is what the team looks like in 2011 when we launched this virtual project research. Actually, I started it as a class, and eventually we started collecting data for the sake of PhD students in this audience. Data was collected as action research. So if you're familiar with action research, which means I'm actively involved in the process, and I'm collecting data as part of the process. Action research is also called participant observation. I'm participating in the research process, but I'm also actively involved in decision making. So in 2011, some key important observations here is that we use waterfall. And for those of you familiar with software development approaches, waterfall is that kind of development practices that everything is clearly defined up front. We know exactly what, ideally you should have very good clarity on what you want the product to deliver upfront. And you want to reduce making a lot of changes in order for development. And you go through those phases, analyze, design, develop, test, deliver the solution. So if you, one important thing here, you see that all the management directors are from Chicago, all the project managers are from Chicago, pretty much DePaul. These are all student teams, all right? So we have project managers from CDM. For you to be a project manager in this project, you must have taken my class, PM 430, and you have to get a grade of at least A- or something like that, because it's a special class. That means you could manage a co-located team, and I think you are capable of managing a global team. For each team, they have 2 developers from Chicago, from CDM, from DePaul, and they have 3 members from all over the world. So Finland, Mexico, Brazil, Poland, 4 countries in 2011. By 2018, the structure kind of changes a little bit. We moved away from waterfall development to Agile Scrum. Agile Scrum is a very different software development practice than waterfall. A lot more, should I say, complex in a sense because of the degree of collaboration. I will explain Agile Scrum to, I assume some of you don't know what that is, so I will explain that in a minute. But this is a team structure. Some important points here is that all the leaders are not from the US anymore. We have the technical lead from South Africa. In 2011, all these leaders are from the US. By 2018, we said, you know what, we have talent that can lead this team globally. And we've evolved. With each year, we make changes to the structure of the team. We learn new things. We make improvement. So by 2017, 2018, we have a very strong technical lead from South Africa. We have the Agile coach from the US. And we have Scrum Master from Germany. Well, Scrum Master is not exactly the same thing as project manager, but they do overlap. Project manager makes sure the project is delivered successfully on scope, on time. Scrum Master is responsible for the process. They don't do exactly the same thing, but kind of there is a number of overlap. The important thing is that you have team leads outside the US. We still maintain 2 developers from CDM, and we added new countries. We added Germany, we added South Africa, and we added, I think those are the total 2 countries. Finland didn't participate at this point, and Poland was not here too. But over the course of 5 years, we've had like 8 countries participated in this project. So what have we learned? Well, before we get to some of the things we've learned during these global virtual team projects, what are some of the challenges with global teams? One thing we know is that distance is not friendly to global teams. If you have managed any project, one thing that either co-located team or global teams strongly need is communication. And distance have negative impact on communication. This is based on some research papers that I kind of pull this from. So you see that distance have negative impact on communication. In fact, let me take a break here and talk about communication for a minute. What's the richest method of communication, the absolute best form of communication? Face-to-face. Actually, face-to-face might still mean Skype or Zoom because I can see your face, right? So I don't want to say face-to-face. In person, because I can see your body language. 80% of what we say or don't say is in the body language. Like if I do this without saying anything, you can tell maybe he's not so happy, right? So body language is powerful. And when you introduce distance, you can't see the body language. And you can set your camera that will just see your face. Sometimes your clothing, the way you dress, tells a lot about how you feel. So in person, And when you introduce distance, you completely miss that. I'll give you a really quick analogy why this is so powerful. If you are driving and you have someone in the car with you, and you don't even look at the person, and you're talking, you can be driving with one hand and we have great conversation. If that person is on the phone, you have to concentrate, and you still say the same thing. You will concentrate a lot more because your brain, and this is pure science, your brain is making up for the communication you cannot feel. You understand what I'm saying? Because you can't see the person, you can't see the body language, your brain needs to concentrate a lot more when you're on the phone. Anyway, so we know that distance has negative impact on communication. Distance have negative impact on control. When you're in a co-located environment, I can go to Isuru and say, Isuru, you know, I'm having a problem with this. Can you help me? And Isuru might say, let's talk over lunch. And I can come and look at your computer. I can see what is going on. There's a lot of, especially from management standpoint, there's management by walk around. You know, there's a lot of things you control when you are in person. And distance definitely makes things a lot more difficult to control. And coordination too. No executive or no senior management or no manager, generally speaking, will globalize software development. It doesn't make sense because of these negative things. So why are companies globalizing? Already we talked about that. Or what are the challenges with globalization? Time zone differences, very obvious. Cultural differences, very obvious. Language differences. If you look at our global teams, what language do they speak in Germany? German, Spanish, South Africa, a whole bunch of different languages. Before that, Poland, they speak Polish, they speak Finnish. I mean, this is not a very easy class or a very easy team, right? So language is definitely a big challenge here. And then you have lots of team names. One of the things we know from research is that for successful global teams, the team spirit is very powerful. If you can build a very high-level team spirit, you can easily get what is called high-performing team. It's not only talent that make you deliver quality product, it's also the team spirit that helps you to get to high-performing teams. And obviously, the development approach. Scrum is very challenging. But today, almost every Fortune 500 companies, or let me take that back, Silicon Valley type companies only use Agile. No one is using waterfall anymore in Silicon Valley. And in my project management class, we teach Agile. So if you're going to globalize your software development, you should think about doing it in an Agile environment. And for this project, we use Agile Scrum. So this is really very complex. We're using Agile Scrum. We move away from waterfall to Agile Scrum. Teamness is difficult. Communication is difficult. We have multiple languages, multiple cultures, multiple time zones. So what are some of the tactical solutions? Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell. Anyone familiar with this? This is Scrum. This is Agile Scrum. And I will just point out one or two things that makes this even more complex in terms of collaboration. There's what is called daily Scrum. Daily Scrum is a 10 to 15 minutes where you actually stand up. It's called daily stand-up. The entire team is supposed to stand up, and when we did this in 2016, 2017, the team will stand up in their respective countries and talks about three things. What did you do yesterday? What are you going to do today? What's going to stop you? That put pressure on people, and you do it every day, not Saturday, Sunday, but some teams actually have to do that. Now, what we found out is that teams that does this more regularly outperform teams that don't. But this is difficult when you think about time zone differences. If you got to do daily stand-up on daily basis, this is difficult. This is just one of the ceremonies. Then you have some other thing. We use weekly sprint. Scrum says you should do 1 to 4 sprint. We do weekly sprint. What does that mean? Every week, there got to be a deliverable at the end of the week. It might be something as small as We introduce new feature on the website. We change the logo, whatever it is, there got to be a weekly deliverables. And you got to do this with a global team. So this is the development method we use. I'm not going to go through this now because this is something we teach in our class. So take one of our project management class.
Agile product management.
There you go.
Or IT2.
Oh, IT2, okay. So there are many classes where you can learn that. All right, so up to this point, what I've tried to do, let me check what I'm doing I'm doing great, okay. What I've tried to do up to this point is to present a few things. One, global teams. I hope we have better understanding of global teams, challenges with global teams, and then a little bit more about global virtual teams, what makes them different from global teams and global centers. So what I want to do for the next few slides is, what are some of the things you can do tactical to make your global software development project successful, especially if you are running a virtual team, beyond collaborative tools, without talking about Zoom, email? Those are obvious. Obviously, you should not use email. It's not a very good. It's not a very good tool for a global project. Use things like Slack and things like that. But I don't want to talk about collaboration tools for now. I want to talk about other little things you could do to still be successful. Number one, reduce time zone differences. So the more teams I have between Chicago and Brazil, the more collaboration that can happen. Because you have about 4 or 5 hours in a day. So I think the time zone differences between New York and Brazil is like 1, right? Yeah. So this is New York, this is Sao Paulo, 1 hour difference. Some people get into the office at 8, we get into the office at 9. We get like 4 hours, we could all be on Zoom, we could all collaborate. We could do our daily stand-up, we could do all kind of stuff. Really very simple. So as you are forming your collaborative teams, you want to reduce between China and Chicago, if you get more people like this, especially for your virtual teams. Now, that is easier said than done. In our global team, we have Chicago, we have South Africa, we have Poland, we have Finland. It's really kind of really complex. I really don't have choice in my team design. It's more of an opportunistic approach in my case. I know professors in those universities, they're willing to collaborate with me within the global virtual project. But the less time zone differences you can have within your team, the better. So some tactical solutions, reduce time zone differences. As you launch your global project, especially if you're going to use Agile, think about maturity, task maturity. Start with very simple tasks. Don't start with complex tasks. Start with things that are maybe a little bit more clear. The more structure to it, the better. As the team gets mature, you can increase the degree of complexity. So this is a tactical solution. I put a virtual team together. Let's start with simple things. In fact, part of that is to build the team spirit. All right, but with time, as this team get mature, you can increase the level of complexity in terms of what they do. Tactical solution 3. You see this among global centers. Global centers want to have full ownership of a particular development. What you want to avoid is what we call follow the sun strategy. So follow the sun strategy is that we both developers, especially when we have very big time zone differences, you want development to continue on that application 24/7. So you will do your development before you get out of the office before 5 o'clock. As you're going home, I'm waking up, I'm picking up that development from where you left off. And by the time you get to the office the next day, I've made progress to it. So there's a lot of back and forth interaction. What happens is that every day, it takes a while for you to look at my code, see what kind of progress I've made to the code so you can continue from there. That's too much collaboration. This works for global centers that you have a team of people maybe working together, but even there you want to reduce that degree of collaboration. You want to give individuals a complete task. For example, you do the design, you do the front-end coding, you do the back-end coding, very separate task. Now, might be two UI, UX, you could collaborate with your UI, UX, you could collaborate with your designer, developers, and let's say you're a data analyst, you could collaborate with another data analyst on the team. But the point is, you wanna have full ownership of a task versus exchanging tasks back and forth. Try as much as possible to reduce cultural imposition. So if you are Italian and you are Brazilian and you are Indian or you are Chinese and we're all working together, which culture should be the dominant culture? Should the culture be the culture of the country that is presenting the project? So in this case, the US culture. I call everybody Jack also, right? People get offended, you know. What we found out is that when people actually learn other people's culture, it becomes a lot easier. Simple things like, I speak Chinese, for example. You don't believe me? Ni hao ma. You got to answer me. You don't speak Chinese?
I do.
Okay, I just said ni hao ma. Okay. I know little things. I speak about 5 languages. I could say, how do you say how I use Spanish? But anyway, very simple things. Reduce cultural gap by just being, don't have cultural imposition. One of the things we learned from outsourcing is that when U.S. companies outsource to India, they try to enforce the U.S. culture on the India developers. They make them speak American English. They make them think like American. And what we found out is that companies that are more successful are companies that also learn the Indian culture. They understand how the Indian people think, how they behave. They pick up little things. In a virtual global software team that you have multiple cultures, multiple language, you really, we found out in our research that teams that don't have cultural pluralism, they don't perform as well as teams that actually have cultural, that embrace each other's culture a little bit more. You may want to be strategic in your location selection. In that case, we weren't very strategic. These are all the countries we have teams from. Can anyone guess, looking at this picture, which country? Which country is this? Finland. Oh, wow. Yeah. Pretty good. That's the most difficult. I said, I was like, I'm pretty sure no one would know that. This is very obvious, right? Germany. And this? South Africa. Mexico. How do you know that? Wow. Okay, and Brazil. Okay. So there is what is called location strategy. Part of location strategy is things like the ease of doing business. In some countries, it's difficult to do business. You may want to look at what we call location, I forgot what readiness of a particular location with respect to technology, internet, electricity, government, regulations, all that. In our case, we're not really very strategic. We just pick wherever location. Whoever said they want to collaborate with us, like, you're part of the research. Come on, let's go, right? You know. You also may want to consider, if you have the choice, individuals versus teams, right? So you think about the team, who goes into the team, or you think about individuals you want to put into the team. It doesn't matter. These are just strategies. And some locations have very strong cultures. Some have not so strong cultures. I would say Brazil would be, in my opinion, not strong culture. Brazil, not strong culture. I would say maybe Poland, strong culture. You know, environmental factors and all that. That is just location strategy. So these are tactical things you could do if you are putting together a virtual team. In our case, because we don't know each other, and we put a team together, one of the things we did, before the team actually started to working on the development project, and I didn't talk about the nature of the project. I'll just give you one example. In one of the teams, they built a medical application, and it's called Medical Vital. So the application will take input from your basic medical vitals, your height, your weight, your temperature, your blood pressure, very basic stuff. And then the application will recommend to you if you are okay. It's not pure science. We kind of make it up. We still back it up with some medical formula. But the application will make a recommendation that based on your vital, we think you're okay. Keep doing what you're doing, keep exercising. And if they think something is wrong, the application might say, like, I think you are a little off. Should we recommend seeing a medical professional? And if you say yes, we then prompt you to medical professionals around you. And if you accept our recommendation, who you should go see, of course, this is just fake application. If you accept our recommendation, a day or two before your appointment or hours before your appointment, you get a reminder on your phone. Your phone will ring, tell you have an appointment with Dr. Yele at 12 o'clock and something like that. So that is just an example of the application we built. But the team building this application don't know each other. That's the point. So one of the very first things we do from tactical standpoint is we make the team introduce themselves. It's called 1 minute video introduction. So you know who is in your team. I put a team together, but you don't know your team members. You don't have a relationship with your team members. So before you start the project, you play a short video of every team member. So I'm going to play a video of this team member for you. This is just one of the videos. If I can make this thing work. Now, me, I want to play this other video. Okay, how can I not use a mouse? It's not going to this. No, the lady, the other, I want to play, have it intro. Okay, there you go.
Where's the cursor?
We can't see. Okay.
Hello, my name is Carolina. I live in Florianópolis, Brazil. My city is a really wonderful place. There are a lot of beautiful beaches. I graduate in control and automatization engineer, and my field of studies is in robotics. I just did 2 internships. The first one was in PLC programming, and the other one is a programming database software. Something interesting about me is that I really appreciate to learn about different cultures, know people around the world, and travel. I hope learning a lot of this experience and create a good networking. I think it's necessary. Each one in the group has responsibility and good communication to make this project successful.
All right, so most of you probably didn't understand half of what she said because you're not used to her language. You know, you don't hear that accent often. That's a Brazilian speak. But if she's on your team, you're probably gonna play that video a couple of times. I kind of chose this randomly, but one important thing about this 1 minute video is you got to tell us who you are, tell us something about your city, you got to tell us something interesting about you, and why you are part of this Global Virtual Software Team project. I picked mine just to kind of give you an idea of what mine looks like, but I'm going to zoom it to the very end of it if I can. How do I zoom this? Oh, sorry. But, you know, okay, I will just tell you in my introduction, I said I'm very cool. I said, because I want you to know something interesting about me, right? So you talked about your city, I talked about Chicago, talked about restaurant. But here's the key thing. This is the tactical solution. You want to know who is in your team. So what is something interesting about you? And I think the only thing interesting about me is I'm super cool. So everybody coming to the project thinks, oh, there's this cool guy that is going to be managing us. So that is my introduction. Tactical solution number 7. This might be the biggest tactical solution to global virtual software team success. Is if you think about the key challenges in a global project, time zone differences. So you got time zone gap, you got cultural gap, you got distance gap, you got all this gap. One of the things we found out in our research is that emotional gap might be even way more difficult. So one of the things with high-performing teams is that they build trust, they build relationship. How do you build trust and relationship at a distance? It's a lot more complex. How do you start trusting that Carolina in Brazil is going to deliver her code on time, even though you play her video? So one of the things we introduced or we found out by accident in this project is what is called team culture, team building experience. And teams that actually have what is called team ceremonies, they outperform teams that don't have team ceremonies. Team ceremonies might be once a week, we just talked about, we do what is called retrospective, team retrospective, which means we talk about, in the lab, in the innovation lab, we start by saying every Friday, what are you grateful for? Everyone in the lab is going to say, oh, I'm grateful for, there is no snow this week. I'm grateful I passed my midterm exam. I'm grateful my grandma is out of the hospital. I'm grateful my dog is feeling better. We found out that teams that have this type of ceremonies way outperform teams that don't have this type of ceremony. So we do 3 things. We say, what are you grateful for? Who needs help? And this who needs help is not just about who needs help with the code. It could be who needs help with anything. You know, some of the things we've seen is that who needs help with understanding things outside the project. Because you are a software engineer in Brazil, I'm a software engineer in Poland, I need help with my class, I can help you. Teams that have this type of relationship outperform teams that don't. So what are you grateful for? Who needs help? And with time, the nature of social relationship becomes so high in some of these teams that they talk about their boyfriend, they talk about their grandma, they talk about their cat. All of a sudden, those gaps, time zone differences, cultural gap, language gap, start reducing. What we found that when you reduce emotional gap among global teams, you start eliminating some of the core challenges that we observe. So this becomes a very powerful findings in this research that anything you could do to reduce emotional gap might actually have bigger effect on your team's success versus some other tactical challenges we found out much earlier. Yes, Mike?
If you have a team member that doesn't wish to participate, do you just let them off the hook and hope maybe?
I threaten them.
So,
I tell them I will fail them.
okay.
No, I'm kidding. Well, we have that. We have 1 or 2 days. I remember 1 year we have a PhD student that participated in the global virtual software team from Brazil, and I was very excited because either Brazil or Mexico, I can't remember. And I was very excited because I wanted to turn that piece of class as a research project. The guy disappeared. I couldn't find him. I talked to the professor. I'm like, you know, this guy is not pulling his weight. I really don't want him on the project anymore. But talking about the emotional gap, I think it's a 10 weeks project. It's a regular part of the regular quarter. It's a 10 weeks project. I remember week 5 or 6, the guy from South Africa just disappeared. And you would think, people would be mad that, he's not doing his job. Instead, people were extremely worried. The team, this guy is really very good. And the team gave him 4 days. They send emails, they send Slack messages, dead silence. So they came to me like, we're worried about this guy. I thought they are worried that they just worried about his safety, his life. And I said, okay, let's give him 1 more day. Then I will tell the professor that, this guy is not delivering what the team expects. And just before I sent that email, he reached out to the team that, I'm sorry we don't have electricity, and I don't have internet. And all of a sudden, they feel very relieved. So your ability to reduce emotional gap is huge when you're working with global software teams, because you really can't do much about time zone differences or cultural gap, but if you can reduce this gap, this will be very helpful. All right, this, in our research, we found out it's not significant. We started with waterfall, and then we switched to Agile. Agile, by far, is way more complex in terms of degree of communication. Waterfall, you could decide to communicate less, but it doesn't really matter. Either you're using waterfall for your software development or you're using Agile. If you have a very good team, you can still have a really good outcome at the end of the day. If you have very clear problem, you could use waterfall. And many research says that don't do unstructured problem with a global team. What we found out is that you surely can do unstructured problem and complex problem with a global virtual software team if you can reduce emotional gap, if you can reduce cultural imposition, if you can reduce time zone differences, you can use a complex research development methodology, although it's not recommended for teams that don't work very well together. So we think this is not significant in our research. I think that's my last slide. Perfect timing. I think we have time for some questions. Yes.
Questions?
Yeah.
Please.
Yes.
So, a lot of what you say about teams that are split apart in different places, actually, you could flip it and think about the cultural differences we have here at DePaul with some of our student teams. Because we do have teams that are multicultural.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're all in the same place, but I believe your idea of reducing what was that last phrase that you called? The
Emotional gap.
Yeah, I think the emotional gap is probably even 10 times more important if they can see each other.
Mm-hmm. To your point, this in one of the teams, let me see if I can get back there. This person, she's from Sweden. She's a DePaul student, but she's an international student, part of the team. She's from Sweden. So she's wearing two cultural caps. She's wearing the Scandinavian culture, but she's representing DePaul, so I put her as a US. So absolutely good point that we sometimes experience that even on campus. Yeah.
How much of this is really specific to software development instead of to general project management approaches to teams? I mean, you could have, question, could you have given this talk talking about global virtual teams that have to solve a problem that is not necessarily a software development problem,
Absolutely.
but anything else?
Absolutely. Maybe the only thing that might be more specific to software development might be the development method. And as we pointed out in this research, it's not significant. Either you're using waterfall, you're using Agile. Apart from that, I think the rest of the tactical solutions apply, generally speaking. If you have big time zone differences, it makes things more difficult. We have a team, if we go back to solution number 1, we have a team that, where is South Africa? In any case, I remember very well, the US team have to wake up at 5 a.m. First week, they like, no, by the third week, he wasn't happy anymore. He was complaining. I'm like, talk to your team. See if someone else will wake up early and, talk to your team. And they talk to the team, and the only time that works for the team is for him to wake up at 5 a.m. How do you solve that problem when a team member is not happy? Reduce emotional gap. They started paying attention to his concern. They started asking, how can I help you? With time, he was happy to wake up. And I was really surprised. I thought, I'm going to pull this guy from this team. I don't have to. Yeah.
And for you, the slide that you had about doing the simple tasks first to build team morale, that kind of goes counter to how Agile works. Because once you have your product backlog ranked, you want to hit the hard stuff right away.
Yeah, I
I'm
get what you're
wondering-
saying.
I'm wondering if you maybe make up a few simple
So
tasks.
even though within Agile, you have your product backlogs, right? And you go by priorities, right? What is most important priorities.
Yeah.
But when you put that in a global context, you can also put another factor in terms of simplicity. You intentionally say, because it's a virtual team, we intentionally want to start with very simple tasks. It may not be the most important, the most priority, but to build a team morale, you kind of build up the level of complexity. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
So maybe I don't have the background of the software development team. So what keep them motivated in addition to these like let's say payment? Do you pay for these teams?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the real world, in companies, money.
No, I mean this is your research. This is your
In
research.
my research, these are all students.
Yes.
And you know, if you play back all the videos, introduction, many of the emphasis like, I'm very excited to be part of a global team. I've never been part of a global team before. So it's actually a class
Okay.
that we turn into kind of research at the same time to collect data. So the students, many of them have been, show of hands, how many of you have taken a class that your teammates, your classmates are outside the US and you need to deliver your solution to your professor? Not you. Exactly the point. People in this class have not taken a global virtual software team project. So you have people from South Africa, from Mexico, from Brazil working with our students. So there is a motivation there. Also, they're getting credit. They're getting course credit in their local university. Our students are also getting course credit here. So there is a motivation
it's
to
like
do well.
GLE, but a lot of
GLE actually pay for this. So
Not
credit
just
to John
students.
Mario for sponsoring this for many years.
I think the difference between your problem at motivating your students and his is that his global teams are picked by hand.
okay, handpicked.
He doesn't have 15 people in Brazil
Yeah.
or 15 people in
I see.
Finland. He
Yeah.
has one
Or
or two,
Or two, yeah.
right? That are handpicked
Yeah.
by the faculty member on the other side.
Yes.
That already is like 90% of the problem
Yes,
solved
yeah.
for you.
Yes, yeah.
But instead, he has 25 students in Brazil
Yeah.
that need to work with his,
Yeah.
and some just
Yeah.
don't give
Yeah.
it in.
Yeah.
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 That's the problem.
That's a problem. And actually, that might supposed to be tactical. That's supposed to be part of my selection criteria. I didn't talk about that. I think
You
I
should
said.
send me to Brazil.
Oh, select location strategy. So that's a really good point. The professor already helped me pick who they think is a good candidate for the global team. Yeah. And remember, if you look at the team structure, I only need one from each country. I don't need, so if you look at this, I have Mexico, 3 people from Mexico. I have Mexico, each one on the team. And each one is handpicked. But again, each team is a problem. You look at this team, Finnish, Spanish, Finnish, Polish, Spanish. You know, it's not a fun team in terms of complexity of language and culture and all that.
How is it structured for the folks outside in Poland, Brazil? Are they taking like an independent study? How do they get credit if they're being handpicked if it's not the whole class?
So what I presented to the university on the other end is that, so we have independent study here. So I presented the idea of independent study. But what I think ended up happening in those countries is that those students are doing this as part of a class. So instead of you doing class project A,
I see.
you are doing class project B.
Okay, flexible.
Yeah. And I think in one of Mexico or something, the PhD student was doing this as part of a PhD special class. And in Finland, I think the student from Finland at that time took this to replace a global class they're supposed to take. So they took this to replace that. Each university is different. And the reason I really don't have so much control about the location is it's all based on my personal network of professors on a global scale. Yeah. And whichever professor says, yeah, this is great, I want to do this project, which I'm like, you are in. I mean, I don't go by the time, all these rules, time zone differences. It's all about opportunity to do this. Australia was very interested in this, and unfortunately, she couldn't get involved, but we're talking about doing it again. So a couple of countries that want to do this is China. If not, there's no China here. Australia is not here. So next time I'm going to include
Massive
those
time zone differences.
But that would be a good research to see how well, and then you're talking language, Chinese language and some other language.
Google doesn't work there. Certain services don't
Yeah.
work.
Level of complexity.
Yeah. But intentionally, we want to also introduce complexity into this research. We don't want to make it, otherwise we won't learn what we want to learn about. What do you need to do to solve global team challenges? Yeah.
I actually get to do we're having a client from Australia in the fall, which is payback for me because I was his developer, so I had to get up. At their time, and now he's going to be the client.
Yeah.
He'll have to get up.
Yeah.
So you didn't show us any data. When you say our research shows that, you know, if the emotional distance was, the teams was outperforming.
How do we get the data?
Yeah.
So remember I said that this is a research method where we use what is called participant observation. So as a professor in charge of this, I'm observing. I'm participating by putting the team together. We meet every week. I give lectures. One of the things we do in this project is every week each team present progress, right? So I'm looking at how they argue with each other. So that's how we collect data. And then we ask them questions.
But how do you measure emotional distance?
We notice in one team that they actually do this team spirit, team bonding. They start the meeting, I think the very first 10 minutes before they start their team project, they actually want to meet 10 minutes early. Oh, the other thing I didn't put in here, and I totally forgot, you got to turn on your camera during the team. It's because, remember, the richest means of communication is in person, face-to-face is next. So if you are just using voice, you are actually increasing the gap. You got to turn your camera on. So that team, they turn their camera on. They meet 10 minutes before the actual project time kicks off. And they talk about personal stuff. They talk about, oh, I'm going to the dentist. My mom is coming home. My boyfriend is going out of town. So they get personal stuff to talk about. And they get to know each other. And some of them are saying, oh, I'm going to come see you in your country. I'll be visiting Europe. I'll go to come see you in Germany, things like that. So they build relationship, which translate to teamness, the whole concept of teamness. And now you don't want to disappoint your team members. Even though you can't see them, you see them, but you are not in the same space. They start building that kind of relationship. So we collect data by observation and seeing how the team is engaging with each other. So it's more like a subjective way of ethnographic type of research. Absolutely, yeah.
Very good advice. I can look for that.
Yeah.
We have some time for maybe a couple of questions. Yes, please.
So I know the Agile and Scrum have to do the time estimates, right? So because we need to figure out a time that everybody agrees. So how the global team do that together, or they do it separately?
So in software project management, there are three things you look at: time, cost, and requirement, right? When we use Agile Scrum for this project, first of all, we said the team needs to have full control, right? And you have 10 weeks. This team must be done in 10 weeks. And you have to deliver something every week. You need to prioritize. Let me go there. So there is a role called product owner, right? And the product owner owns the product, owns the project we're developing. So every week you report to the product owner, and the product owner prioritizes what is important to the product owner. Then you take that priority, you take it back to your team, The team works on it, you return it back to the product owner. So there is a weekly deliverable to the product owner.
Right, so like product owner gave user stories, and then user story will be splitted by the Scrum Master like many tasks. And each task we may going to have an estimation, right? So, but the estimation, because someone will say 10 hours, and someone see the problem, say that won't be solved in 10 hours, should be 20 hours, for example, then we need to discuss the problems together to figure out optimize the time that is perfect or better for the others, right? So do we need to also discuss this time estimate for each task together as globally?
Absolutely. That's what you do during the sprint review. So this is your sprint review, sprint planning. So you do estimation, and we're not really doing time estimation in terms of using time. We use scale. We use like size estimation and some other estimations. But the important thing you said is, because we're using Agile, very important aspect of Agile is the team must decide. So the Scrum Master don't prioritize, the product owner prioritize, the Scrum owner make sure they follow the process, and the Scrum owner make sure the team decide on what it should do and what time allocation. The other thing with virtual software team is you have team of individual experts spread all over the world. So you might say, let's say you are in China, you go say, I can do this. And someone in Brazil says, I can do this. So you do your own task, and that person is doing their own task. At the end of the week, we make sure that everything comes together to deliver to the product owner. I'm not saying it's easy because of the time zone differences, but that's the process we follow. Yes?
I was late at the meeting, but I assume that all of these discussions happen in English, even though everybody's from a different.
Unfortunately, yes.
I see. So when they separate into their own individual groups, it might be Finnish, Spanish, Polish.
See, that's the thing, though. There is no individual groups here. There is no group. We don't have groups. It's a team of one. If you look at this team, you have one German, one Mexican, one South African. The only team here is a US team. And actually, I encourage them not to meet together because it's unfair to the global team. So you can, but if this is a global centers, then you'll be discussing in Portuguese with your Brazilian team, in Finnish with your Finnish teams. But it's a virtual team. It's individuals separated all over the world. So you don't really have a team. You are a team on your own.
Awesome. All right, then let's thank Professor Yali again for his wonderful talk.
Thank you.